What if the atomic bomb, the single most destructive invention in human history, was not born in the sun-scorched deserts of New Mexico, but instead emerged from the heavily industrialized heart of Nazi Germany, years before the Manhattan Project was even a whisper in the corridors of power? This is not a question of mere speculative fiction. It is a chilling historical possibility that haunted the Allied powers throughout the Second World War, a specter that drove the most brilliant minds of a generation to a desperate, unprecedented effort. It is a narrative that hinges on a series of critical discoveries, fateful decisions, and the complex motivations of one of the 20th century's most brilliant and enigmatic scientific minds. The story of the German nuclear program is a labyrinth of scientific breakthroughs, staggering errors, and profound moral ambiguity. It forces us to confront a terrifying counterfactual: a world in which the apocalyptic power of the atom was first unleashed, not to end a global conflict, but to secure the victory of a tyrannical regime bent on world domination. The race for the bomb was not just a scientific endeavor. It was a desperate, shadow-drenched battle for the future of civilization. Itself a clandestine war fought in laboratories and lecture halls, with equations as weapons and theories as battle plans. And for a terrifying moment in history, it appeared that the forces of darkness had an insurmountable lead, threatening to cast the entire planet under the shadow of a nuclear swastika, fundamentally and irrevocably altering the destiny of humankind. In the final, anxious weeks of 1938, as the world held its breath on the precipice of war, the discovery of world-shattering importance was made in a Berlin laboratory at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Chemistry. It was here that two meticulous German chemists, Otto Hahn and his assistant Fritz Strassmann, conducted an experiment that would forever alter the course of history. Their objective was not to create a weapon, but to explore the frontiers of atomic science by bombarding uranium, the heaviest known natural element, with a stream of slow-moving neutrons. They expected to create even heavier transuranic elements, but instead, they found something bewildering: traces of barium, a much lighter element, among the decay products. This result was so unexpected, so contrary to the established laws of nuclear physics at the time, that Hahn initially dismissed it as a mistake. It was simply unthinkable, yet the evidence was undeniable. After rigorously rechecking their work, Hahn wrote a letter to his exiled former colleague, the brilliant physicist Lise Meitner, describing the baffling result and famously asking, "Perhaps you can come up with some fantastic explanation." From her refuge in Sweden, Meitner, along with her nephew Otto Frisch, did just that. They correctly theorized that Hahn and Strassmann had not fused elements but had achieved the impossible. They had split the uranium atom, a process they named nuclear fission. In doing so, they had unlocked a titanic force that had been dormant within the very fabric of the universe, power that would irrevocably alter the course of human history. By bombarding uranium with neutrons, they had successfully split the atom, unleashing a quantity of energy that was, until that moment, purely the domain of theoretical speculation and science fiction. This process, nuclear fission, converted a minuscule amount of mass directly into a colossal amount of energy. Precisely as Albert Einstein's famous equation, E=mc, had predicted decades earlier. The energy released from a single uranium nucleus was immense, but the true terror and promise lay in the secondary effect. The fission process itself released additional neutrons. These newly freed neutrons could, in turn, strike other uranium nuclei, causing them to split and release even more energy and more neutrons. This cascading effect, a self-sustaining chain reaction, could propagate almost instantaneously through a critical mass of uranium, releasing an explosive force millions of times more powerful than any conventional chemical explosive. The implications were as profound as they were terrifying. On one hand, this power could be harnessed to generate limitless, clean energy for all of humanity. On the other, it could be weaponized to create a bomb of unimaginable destructive capability, a weapon that could level entire cities in the blink of an eye. The quiet, methodical work of Hahn and Strassmann in their Berlin laboratory had, without intention, opened Pandora's box. This was not merely another incremental step in the annals of scientific discovery. It was the deafening crack of a starting pistol that echoed across the globe, signaling the beginning of the most consequential and terrifying race in human history. The intellectual curiosity that had driven nuclear physics for decades was instantaneously transformed into a matter of urgent national survival. The abstract theories debated in university lecture halls and academic journals were now the foundational blueprints for a weapon that could decide the outcome of the coming global conflict. Every major government with a sophisticated scientific establishment immediately recognized the monumental strategic implications of Hahn and Strassmann's findings. The knowledge of how to unleash atomic energy could not be contained. It leaped across borders, transmitted through scientific publications and hushed conversations, setting in motion a clandestine competition where the stakes were nothing less than the fate of the world. From this moment forward, the pursuit of the atomic bomb became a desperate, high-stakes sprint into the unknown. A race against time, against physics, and, most pressingly, against Nazi Germany. The news of the Berlin experiment spread with the speed of an electric current through the international community of physicists. A tightened group that, until then, had largely transcended national borders in the shared pursuit of knowledge. Scientists in Paris, Cambridge, Copenhagen, and across the United States immediately began to replicate and expand upon the German findings. But this intellectual excitement was overshadowed by a rapidly darkening political reality. The discovery had been made in the capital of the Third Reich, a regime that had already demonstrated its aggressive ambitions and its utter disregard for humanitarian norms. As Adolf Hitler's armies prepared to march across Europe, the world's leading scientists, many of whom were refugees who had fled Nazi persecution, were consumed by a singular, horrifying fear that Germany would be the first to weaponize this discovery. This anxiety kicked off a frantic, undeclared global race, a competition waged not for scientific prestige or Nobel Prizes, but for the very survival of freedom and democracy against the terrifying backdrop of an impending world war that threatened to engulf all of civilization. With the world teetering on the brink of total war, Germany, the birthplace of fission, acted with alarming speed and purpose. The Nazi regime, ever efficient in harnessing science for military ends, wasted no time. Shortly after the invasion of Poland in September 1939, the German Army Weapons Bureau swiftly consolidated the nation's top scientific minds, compelling them to join a secret military research effort. This project was given the unassuming name Uranvarian, or Uranium Club. Its singular top-secret mission was to investigate the military applications of nuclear fission to determine if an atomic bomb was feasible, and if so, to build it for the Third Reich. This wasn't a loose academic collaboration. It was a state-directed, military-funded program that brought together Germany's most brilliant physicists, chemists, and engineers under the direct authority of the Nazi war machine. The full industrial and logistical might of the German state was placed at their disposal, creating a formidable organization dedicated to unlocking the ultimate weapon. The German Uranium Club began its work with an array of advantages that struck fear into the hearts of Allied scientists. Firstly, they possessed an unparalleled reservoir of intellectual capital, including some of the world's leading physicists and chemists who had not fled the country. Secondly, their military conquests provided them with immediate access to crucial raw materials. The annexation of Czechoslovakia in 1938 had given them control of the Joachimsthal uranium mines, one of the richest sources of uranium ore in the world. Thirdly, and perhaps most critically, they had a significant head start. While the German military was actively funding and organizing its nuclear program in late 1939, the Allies were still years away from committing the resources and organizing the vast industrial scientific enterprise that would become the Manhattan Project. On paper, the pieces were all in place for a Nazi atomic bomb: the best scientists, the essential resources, the military backing, and a 2-year lead over their adversaries. It seemed less a question of if they would succeed, but when. Who could possibly be entrusted to lead such a monumental and perilous task? A project that held the potential to grant its masters dominion over the entire world. The choice, almost inevitably, fell upon one of the towering figures of 20th century science, Werner Heisenberg. By the late 1930s, Heisenberg was already a legend in the world of physics. He had won the Nobel Prize in 1932 at the astonishingly young age of 31 for his foundational work in creating the field of quantum mechanics and for formulating his famous uncertainty principle, a concept that fundamentally changed our understanding of reality at the subatomic level. His intellect was considered second to none, a genius on par with Einstein himself. His deep theoretical understanding of the atom made him the most logical, and indeed the most brilliant candidate to spearhead Germany's quest to harness its power. The Nazi regime, recognizing his indispensable expertise, placed the future of its most ambitious military project squarely on the shoulders of this one man. It is a crucial and often misunderstood fact that Werner Heisenberg was not a member of the Nazi Party. He had, in fact, been targeted and viciously attacked by Nazi ideologues in the mid-1930s, proponents of the Deutsche Physik, German physics movement who rejected the Jewish science of Einstein and relativity, labeled Heisenberg a white Jew for his continued teaching of these theories. He was politically suspect and even underwent interrogation by the SS, however. Through a combination of professional necessity and personal conviction, he made a fateful choice. He chose to remain in Germany. He believed it was his patriotic duty to his homeland, a duty to preserve the integrity and future of German science through the dark period of Nazi rule. He reasoned that he could lead from within, protecting physics and its practitioners until the regime inevitably collapsed. This decision, however noble its intent may have been, was fraught with catastrophic moral compromise, as it directly led to the world's most dangerous secret being placed into his hands by the very regime he privately disdained. This deliberate and deeply personal decision to stay in his homeland, driven by a complex mixture of patriotism, professional ambition, and a sense of duty to his scientific community, had a momentous consequence that resonated far beyond the borders of Germany. By remaining, Heisenberg became the most senior and respected nuclear physicist within the Third Reich, and therefore the de facto leader of its atomic ambitions. This singular choice effectively placed the world's most dangerous and closely guarded secret the theoretical and practical knowledge required to construct a nuclear weapon directly and unequivocally into his possession. He stood at the absolute nexus of theoretical physics and military power, a gatekeeper to a technology that could enslave the world. The fate of millions, and perhaps the future of civilization itself, now rested on the calculations he would make, the advice he would give, and the hidden intentions he harbored within his own conflicted conscience. Was it a simple, catastrophic mistake born of scientific oversight under the immense pressures of war? Or was it something far more complex, deliberate and calculated act of sabotage, orchestrated by a brilliant mind repulsed by the ultimate consequences of his own work? This question lies at the very heart of the Heisenberg enigma and has fueled decades of intense historical debate. The entire narrative of the German bomb project pivots on this single point of uncertainty. Did one of the world's most gifted physicists simply make a mathematical error of stunning proportions, a blunder that would be inexcusable for a graduate student? Or was the error a carefully constructed fiction, a subtle act of intellectual resistance designed to mislead the Nazi leadership and steer the project down a path of inevitable failure? The answer determines whether Heisenberg was a failed scientist who inadvertently saved the world, or a quiet hero who consciously prevented Adolf Hitler from obtaining the ultimate weapon. During the critical early stages of the German nuclear program, Werner Heisenberg was tasked with performing one of the most essential calculations for determining the feasibility of an atomic bomb, estimating the critical mass of uranium-235. This value represents the minimum amount of fissile material required to sustain a nuclear chain reaction, the explosive engine of the bomb. Heisenberg's calculation produced a result that was startlingly, almost unbelievably large. He concluded that a functional bomb would require several tons of the rare U-235 isotope. This figure was astronomically high, vastly overestimating the true amount needed, which we now know is closer to 50 kilograms, or about the size of a grapefruit. The discrepancy was immense, a difference of orders of magnitude for a physicist of Heisenberg's caliber, whose entire career was built on precise mathematical modeling of the subatomic world. Such a colossal error was, and remains, deeply perplexing. It was this single fundamentally flawed calculation that would shape the entire trajectory of the Nazi nuclear effort. This single monumental error in calculating the critical mass had profound and immediate consequences. It effectively convinced the entire German scientific team, as well as the military leadership they reported to, that constructing a functional atomic bomb was a technologically and logistically impractical endeavor, at least within the time frame of the ongoing war. The prospect of separating multiple tons of the extremely rare U-235 isotope from natural uranium, a substance in which it constitutes only 0.7%, was an industrial challenge of such staggering proportions that it seemed impossible. It would have required the construction of enormous, costly, and technologically unprecedented enrichment facilities. A commitment of resources that Germany, already stretched thin by its conventional war effort, could not possibly afford. Heisenberg's calculation, therefore, acted as a definitive roadblock, transforming the atomic bomb from an urgent military objective into a distant, almost theoretical possibility. Based on the seemingly insurmountable obstacle presented by Heisenberg's miscalculation, the German Uhrenverein made a decisive strategic pivot. The project's primary objective shifted away from the pursuit of a weapon of mass destruction. Convinced that a bomb was out of reach for the foreseeable future, their focus turned toward a much more achievable and less strategically urgent goal: the construction of a functional nuclear reactor. The new aim was to harness the power of nuclear fission, not for explosive release, but for controlled energy generation. Such a reactor would serve as a powerful proof of concept, demonstrating a mastery of the chain reaction, and could potentially be used to power German submarines and extend the reach of its navy. This shift in priorities represented a fundamental downscaling of the program's ambition, moving it from the fast track of weapons development to the slower, more methodical pace of experimental energy research. Was this strategic pivot to a peaceful energy project a deliberate and conscious moral choice? Werner Heisenberg and his colleagues would compellingly claim in the years following Germany's defeat. In his post-war narrative, Heisenberg portrayed himself and his team as men of conscience, who, horrified at the prospect of giving a nuclear weapon to Hitler, subtly and intentionally guided the research towards the benign application of a nuclear reactor. This interpretation paints him as a quiet resistor, a scientist who used his unique position to slow walk and divert a program aimed at creating an ultimate evil. However, this self-serving account has been heavily scrutinized by historians, who question whether this noble motivation was real or simply a convenient post-facto justification for failure. Or was the decision to focus on a reactor simply the only logical scientific? This alternative interpretation presents a far less heroic picture. In this view, there was no secret moral deliberation or active sabotage. The German team, led by Heisenberg, simply concluded that building a bomb was scientifically and industrially out of reach with the resources available. Faced with this reality, they pursued the only viable alternative that would allow their research to continue: a small-scale experimental reactor. This wasn't a choice to pursue peace over war, but rather a pragmatic decision to aim for a tangible, achievable scientific goal, instead of chasing an objective they had incorrectly deemed to be a fantasy. It frames the outcome not as a triumph of morality, but as a consequence of fundamental scientific error. While the German Uranium Club grappled with its flawed calculations, the Allied powers were far from idle. Gripped by the terrifying fear that Heisenberg and his team were on the verge of success, fear amplified by their own leading scientists like Albert Einstein, they launched a series of relentless and highly effective counterintelligence and sabotage operations. This shadow war was waged on multiple fronts, targeting every known component of the German nuclear effort. Allied intelligence agencies worked tirelessly to track the movements of German scientists, to identify their research facilities, and to estimate the progress they were making. The primary objective was clear and desperate: to disrupt, delay, ultimately destroy Germany's capacity to build a nuclear weapon, using any means necessary. This clandestine battle was every bit as critical to the outcome of the war as the major military campaigns that were being fought across the globe. Among the most famous and daring of these Allied operations were the series of raids targeting the Vemork hydroelectric power plant in Nazi-occupied Norway. This remote, heavily guarded facility was at the time the world's only industrial-scale producer of a substance known as heavy water, while the American Manhattan Project would ultimately use purified graphite as a diuc moderator to slow down neutrons and enable a chain reaction. Heisenberg's team had incorrectly dismissed graphite as unsuitable. Instead, they pinned their entire reactor design on the use of heavy water. This made the Werner plant not just a strategic industrial asset, but the absolute linchpin of the entire German nuclear program. The Allies recognized this critical vulnerability and knew that if they could destroy this single facility, they could potentially halt the Nazi bomb project in its tracks. The resulting sabotage missions would become legendary feats of military audacity and courage. The Allied sabotage missions against the Norwegian heavy water plant, carried out by a small team of courageous Norwegian commandos trained in Britain, were a stunning success. In a daring raid in February 1943, codenamed Operation Gunnerside, the commandos managed to infiltrate the heavily fortified plant and destroy the heavy water production cells, spilling months' worth of the precious substance onto the factory floor. Although the Germans worked frantically to repair the damage, the Allies followed up with heavy bombing raids. Finally, when the Germans attempted to ship their remaining stockpile of heavy water back to Germany by ferry, Norwegian saboteurs successfully planted explosives and sank the vessel in the deep waters of Lake Tinn, ensuring the critical cargo never reached its destination. These successive and devastating blows effectively destroyed Germany's primary, essentially only, source of the heavy water that was absolutely critical for the specific reactor design they had chosen to pursue. Before the cataclysm of the Second World War tore the world and their relationship apart, the bond between the Danish physicist Niels Bohr and his German protege Werner Heisenberg was as close as that of a father and son. Bohr, already a Nobel laureate and the patriarch of the international physics community at his institute in Copenhagen, had recognized Heisenberg's prodigious talent early on. He took the brilliant young German under his wing, mentoring him, challenging him, and collaborating with him during the 1920s, the golden age of quantum physics. Their relationship was a cornerstone of the scientific spirit of the era, a partnership that transcended nationality and was built on a shared, passionate quest to unravel the deepest mysteries of the universe. This intellectual and personal bond was profound, representing the very ideal of science as a unifying force for humanity. The Danish physicist Niels Bohr was not just a scientist, he was an institution. His Institute for Theoretical Physics in Copenhagen was the global epicenter of the quantum revolution, a place where the brightest minds from around the world gathered to debate and shape the future of science. As its director, Bohr was the universally acknowledged mentor, a philosophical guide to a generation of physicists. Among all of his brilliant students and collaborators, the German Werner Heisenberg stood out as his most dazzling protege. Bohr saw in Heisenberg a once-in-a-generation intellect, a mind capable of taking the radical ideas of quantum theory to their ultimate conclusions. Their collaboration was incredibly fruitful, leading to the formulation of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which remains a foundational element of physics to this day. It was a deep friendship, a powerful intellectual partnership forged in the crucible of revolutionary science, and built upon a bedrock of immense mutual respect and shared genius. The outbreak of the Second World War and the subsequent Nazi occupation of Europe shattered everything that their friendship had been built upon. The shared borderless world of scientific inquiry vanished, placed by the stark, brutal divisions of national allegiance and ideological conflict. Their personal circumstances became tragically divergent. Niels Bohr, whose mother was Jewish, found himself trapped in Nazi-occupied Denmark, living under the constant threat of persecution and arrest by a regime that reviled his heritage and his scientific principles. Meanwhile, Werner Heisenberg, despite his personal reservations about the Nazis, became the public face and scientific leader of nuclear research for that very same regime. The war had transformed them from collaborators into adversaries, placing them on opposite sides of a catastrophic global conflict and forcing them to navigate a new reality where their shared passion for physics was now overshadowed by the imperatives of war and survival. In a move of incredible risk and profound historical significance, Werner Heisenberg undertook a secret and dangerous journey in September of 1941. He traveled from Germany to the heart of occupied Denmark to Copenhagen, for the explicit purpose of arranging a private meeting with his old mentor Niels Bohr. The trip was fraught with peril. It was an unauthorized visit to an occupied country to meet with a scientist who was under Nazi surveillance. The motivations behind this clandestine journey remain one of the most intensely debated aspects of Heisenberg's life. Is he acting as a German patriot, trying to glean information about the Allied nuclear efforts? Or was he a man in the grip of a moral crisis, risking everything to speak with the one person in the world he trusted to understand his predicament? Perhaps to send a warning or to seek absolution? What was actually said during that brief, intensely charged, and fateful conversation between the two physicists would become a source of enduring mystery and bitter controversy, debated by historians, scientists, and playwrights for decades to come. The meeting was private, with no witnesses to corroborate either man's account. It took place during a short walk in the gardens near Bohr's home, a fleeting moment of privacy in a city swarming with occupying soldiers and informants. The precise content, the tone, and the intent of their words became a historical Rorschach test, with different interpretations reflecting different views of Heisenberg's character and motivations. The ambiguity of this single conversation has since spawned countless books, articles, and even a celebrated play, Copenhagen, all attempting to reconstruct the dialogue and decipher the true meaning behind this pivotal and ultimately tragic encounter. The meeting, whatever its true purpose, ended disastrously. Hearing his former protege speak about the military applications of atomic energy and the seeming inevitability of a German victory, reacted with what he later described as shock and horror. He perceived Heisenberg's words not as a warning, but as a deeply disturbing indication that Germany was close to building a bomb and that his friend was complicit in the effort. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was instantly and irrevocably shattered. The conversation concluded abruptly, their friendship destroyed forever in a thick fog of fear, moral outrage, and profound mistrust. Heisenberg left Copenhagen having failed in whatever his mission was, leaving behind a bewildered and terrified Niels Bohr, and a relationship that, like the continent of Europe itself, lay in ruins. After the war ended and the world began to reckon with its devastation, two starkly different and completely irreconcilable stories emerged about the 1941 Copenhagen meeting. In his version of events, Werner Heisenberg portrayed himself as a reluctant participant in the German war effort, a man trapped by circumstances. He claimed that the true purpose of his visit was to communicate a series of subtle messages to the Allies through Bohr. He insisted he was trying to convey that a bomb was theoretically possible, a fact both sides needed to understand, but also to signal that he and the other German scientists would do everything in their power to delay and obstruct the project's completion, ensuring it would not be realized in time to affect the war's outcome. In this narrative, Heisenberg is a man of conscience, attempting a dangerous gambit of high-level, clandestine diplomacy. Niels Bohr's account of their fateful meeting was chillingly and diametrically different. He remembered the encounter not as a veiled warning, but as an act of arrogant and menacing nationalism on Heisenberg's part. From Bohr's perspective, Heisenberg seemed confident of a German victory and was boasting about the significant progress of the Nazi bomb project. He believed Heisenberg was not trying to send a warning, but was instead on a fishing expedition, subtly attempting to probe what, if anything, the Allies knew about nuclear fission and whether they had their own weapons program. Bohr felt that Heisenberg was, in effect, trying to recruit him, or at least his tacit compliance, for the Nazi cause, leveraging their old friendship to gain intelligence and to demoralize the Allied side. It was a conversation that left Bohr deeply shaken and convinced that his former friend was actively working to build a bomb for Hitler. As the Allied armies closed in on Germany from both the East and the West in the final chaotic months of the war, the once formidable Third Reich began to crumble, and with it, the German nuclear program fell into complete disarray. The scientists who had once worked with the full backing of the state were now scattered across the country, their laboratories destroyed by bombing raids, and their research materials confiscated or lost in the turmoil. The project had lost all central organization and momentum, devolving into a series of desperate, last-ditch experiments conducted in makeshift labs, such as a cave beneath a castle in Heigerloch. The dream of a German nuclear reactor, let alone a bomb, had evaporated amidst the collapse of the entire Nazi war machine. The significant head start they had once possessed had been squandered through a combination of scientific errors, Allied sabotage, and a lack of unified purpose. But what did the German scientists, and specifically Werner Heisenberg, truly know about atomic bomb design? How close had they actually come to uncover the definitive answers to these questions? The Allies initiated a top-secret mission codenamed Operation Epsilon. As the war concluded, a special intelligence unit moved swiftly through defeated Germany, capturing the 10 most senior scientists associated with the Uran. This group included luminaries like Otto Hahn, the discoverer of fission, Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, and their primary target, Werner Heisenberg himself. The goal of Operation Epsilon was not to punish these men, but to interrogate them through subterfuge, to plumb the depths of their knowledge, and to finally and conclusively determine the true state of the Nazi atomic bomb project. These 10 captured German scientists were not sent to a standard prisoner of war camp or a harsh interrogation facility. Instead, they were transported to a comfortable, even luxurious, British safe house known as Farm Hall, a stately country manor located near Cambridge. Here they were treated as guests rather than prisoners, provided with good food, newspapers, and a piano. However, this seemingly pleasant environment was a carefully constructed illusion. The entire house, from the bedrooms to the dining room, was extensively and secretly bugged with state-of-the-art recording devices. For 6 months, the Allies patiently listened in, creating a gilded cage where the scientists would feel relaxed and uninhibited, encouraging them to speak freely amongst themselves about their wartime work. On the evening of August 6, 1945, they were informed of the bombing of Hiroshima. The secret tapes from that night are a stunningly raw document. They capture the scientists' shock, their disbelief, and their frantic search for excuses. But most remarkably, after the initial shock, Heisenberg held an impromptu lecture for the others, and in a single evening, correctly worked out the fundamental principles of the bomb's design and accurately recalculated the critical mass calculation he had failed to make for the entire war. The Farm Hall tapes proved it. They had not failed because they were moral saboteurs. They had failed because they had never truly understood how to build a bomb. In the end, the legacy of Werner Heisenberg remains a contested battleground of history. A complex and ambiguous portrait of a man caught at the horrifying intersection of genius and political catastrophe. A chilling reminder that the line between scientific ambition and grave moral responsibility can be terrifyingly thin.